Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Joe Vitale, and welcome to another episode of Zero Limits Living. Every Friday, I bring you information and inspiration designed to help you break free, designed to help you awaken, designed to help you live at zero limits. Now, to do this, I always bring somebody with me, and I've got a special guest with me today, and I want to read her introduction to be sure that I cover it completely. Here we go. Michelle Barr is a business coach and mindset mentor, speaker, author, and teacher who helps you turn your life's calling into a profitable business you love. She is the founder and creator of Spiritual Coach School and the Barr Institute for the Intuitive and the Healing Arts. Her most recent book is called From Calling to Cash. And I know it's a great book because not only did I read it and endorse it, but I wrote the foreword to it. After turning her own expensive hobby into a full-time profitable business, she took it online and built the thriving global online business she has today. She is a spiritual business expert and has been a personal transformation specialist for over 30 years. Michelle lives in Texas and travels both nationally and internationally, speaking, teaching, and serving. And what this bio doesn't say is that not only is she a personal friend of mine, but it was 4 years ago today that she and I did a private mastermind together. She had hired me for the evening. She came into town and we had, 3 or 4 hours of brainstorming. It was also a turning point because I saw how profound she is, how experienced she is, how successful she is. She kept me on my toes with all kinds of questions. I was so impressed with her. I invited her to be part of my secret mastermind, which I'd tell you more about, but it's a secret. So this is a very special guest, Michelle Barr. Michelle, how are you?
Thank you. Wow. Yes, I just saw in my memories, we had dinner 4 years ago tonight. So What a great time for me to show up on your show.
Yes, thank you for making time. I know how busy you're doing it. You're traveling, blowing and going and all of this. So I have some questions for you. And these questions are designed to help all of our viewers because these people are watching. Some are broke, some are struggling, some quit their jobs, some resigned, some were fired, some were laid off. And they probably have heard from me or others that they can make money doing what they love. They can make money from their passion, from their hobby, from their calling. And so we want to explore that in particular. Now, in the bio that I was reading, it said that you turned your own expensive hobby into a full-time profitable business. And I remember thinking, what was your expensive hobby?
Yes, because I was a therapist and I decided to give up my license. I felt like I wanted to do more of the intuitive and healing work and go in that direction. And what I created first, I got inspiration. I created a local healing center and the community loved it, but I was funding it out of my own pocket. So it became a very expensive hobby because I was serving and I created financial disaster for my own family and myself because I didn't understand business, but I was loving doing it. So I did it way too long at a cost.
So there's a little educational point for us that are viewing right now is that we have to have at least an eye on business. I know that you've said that in order to become successful in business, you have to look at your mindset. Can you talk about that? What does mindset have to do with success in business, no matter if you're following your calling or doing something else?
First, you get this calling and you step in the calling, but then there are the real world issues around understanding how to promote and market and create a brand, which were all things I wasn't doing. And then I bumped up against a lot of money issues. A lot of people who set out to be helpers and healers especially have issues around charging and their money. And I had to really get into my money stuff. And then once I learned the strategies, I found that I still had to have the mindset to be the person to do those strategies. It wasn't just knowing the strategies. I had to become the person that could get those results.
Okay, so now we're pulling back some layers to understand this. So I think where I need to go is, how does somebody discover their calling? Your book is so wonderful. You've discovered your calling, but if there's people watching this going, well, this sounds interesting, but I don't even know what my calling is. I don't know what my talent is. I don't know what I would turn my passion into a profit because I don't know what it is. How do they find it?
It is starting with that passion. It's a great question because a lot of times it's the things that people are coming to you for, but you're giving it away for free. It's the things you're doing on nights and weekends while you're working a job you don't love to pay the bills and make money. And it's what you just cannot not do and that you love doing. It's the things where you lose hours, you're not looking at time, and you're just fully immersed. It's for me too. It was the things I can talk about for hours and hours. And now I talk about them as my job, as building my brand and doing my work. And it's really those things that are in your heart. If you can move into being desire led, you can find the passion and then you find the purpose part of that.
I like that. Move into desire led. So I'm wondering if somebody's sitting there and they're watching us and they're hearing you and they're going, well, I really like talking about the latest movies. And I really love going to movies, or if they're still in a pandemic, sitting at home and watching Netflix or Amazon or Prime or whatever the latest movies are. And that's what they talk about all the time. Is that a clue that there may be something there in that what might be taken for granted and taken as being obvious?
It can be because they are gathering information and expertise and they're just doing it for fun, but there can be a real need for that. And with social media and social media presence and platforms, I would start there. With you and I both know that information is a part of what people are buying these days. And so if you know how to give that information, I'm always Googling what next movie should I watch on Netflix and what do I want? And I depend on people to do that. And do you know how many people just do that for fun when they could monetize it? And then the other part of the purpose and the calling that would come with that is if you naturally are a teacher or you see yourself as a speaker or you feel like you want to write a book, people come to me and say, I see myself on stages. I see myself with a book and I see myself teaching or leading retreats or workshops. And that was what I had. And I had no idea how to make it happen. And now I've done all of that.
But how did you do all of that? If you were saying it, and by the way, I wanted to point out in case people didn't catch it, you used the phrase, I see myself. People were coming to you and saying, I see myself on stage. I see myself. And you said yourself, I see myself. So I think it's a clue. If people are talking to other people and they say, I see myself as a chef. I see myself doing movie reviews. I see myself. That could be a tip. I think just the phrase, I see myself, because it's talking about the visual and it's talking about what you're seeing in your own brain. So that's the first tip I want to give out of what I just heard you. I'm reflecting back. But the next part is, okay, you didn't know how to do any of this either. You didn't know how to write a book. You didn't know how to get on stages. You didn't know how to get your first gig. How did you learn?
Yeah, I love that you're bringing that up because I have still learned to this day when people come to me, I ask them to tell me what they're seeing, what their vision and their inspiration, even if they have no idea how to make it happen, because I still trust that. That comes from spirit or from the soul. Then I can help give them strategies. One thing I learned when I saw that, and I thought, I don't know how to make that happen, like you're saying, I took whatever was in front of me. I have not been without a coach or mentor since 2009, and I wouldn't be. So I started hiring my first coaches and mentors, and I paid attention to what lit me up. But I started with just a local healing center, and I could teach a class on that. My first classes were $5 to the community, and I used Meetup, and I ran Meetup. So whatever was in front of me, I learned until I learned more. But I had to both have coaches help me see my own stuff, the mindset, and give me strategies that I could then implement. But it was back then, I couldn't have even told you this is what I was creating now because I didn't even know it existed. So I followed the breadcrumbs and I grew and evolved, and then new opportunities showed up.
That's so beautiful. I'm glad that you're explaining it in this way, because I would explain the same thing. I've written over 80 books at this point. And when people hear that, they're overwhelmed and it's incomprehensible and they can never imagine it. And I point out, when I wrote my first book, it was 1984. I had no desire, no interest, and no ability to write another book at that point. In fact, it was 10 more years before the second book came out. But what I was doing is what you just well said. I was following the breadcrumbs. I did what was next in the moment for me to do. As I kept doing that, I end up at this point decades later, and I can look back and go, oh, wow, by following breadcrumbs, I've written over 80 books. And even I'm impressed. It's like, how did you do that? So you got a coach, which I'm a firm believer in. I started Miracles Coaching because of that need and because I saw how valuable it was. You have coaching going on as well, and we'll talk about that soon. So you've got coaches, you were taking actions, you were taking the baby steps, you were following the breadcrumbs. When was your first book?
I sat on it for a while and I caught the mistake through one of my coaches, because that following the breadcrumbs, I found that because I didn't know what would happen 5 steps ahead, I never wrote the book. And I also had a story that once I write the book, it's going to get really expensive, but I didn't know any of what was coming. And I finally wrote the book. So in 2015, I wrote my first book and I ended up on stages with my books. My business started in 2007. I finally got out of my way and wrote the book. And then my second book came just a few years after that.
You know, once you do the first one, the second one becomes easier, partly because you've already told yourself, I know how to do this. You already broke the ice. You made your first dollar, so to speak. So there's a couple more things that really interest me here, and it's really a revolving around mindset. You had mentioned mindset and money, for example, and I know from my own experience in the self-help community, the spiritual community, the healers community, that there is a belief that what they're doing is a gift and they shouldn't charge for it. As a result, many of those healers and teachers and people that are out there doing their thing are broke. They're not only broke, but they're suffering, they're struggling, but they keep thinking, oh, I can't charge for that. What is your take on that as a mindset, and how do you get around it?
That is what keeps me up at night, and it has become my platform, and it is controversial to this day. And there's this whole thing when I started my local healing community, and I met all these really gifted healers and intuitives and people in alternative medicine and all of that. And they had these big dreams, and they had these big I see myself and callings, and yet they had these beliefs, and they would tell me, oh, well, people just don't pay much for this. You don't get money for this. And this is just how it is. And people in the culture and the community will say, well, if it's a gift from spirit, why are you charging? The biggest thing they don't realize is, yes, it's a gift from spirit, but to be able to do it, I sat in a development circle every Friday night for 3 years. I haven't been without a coach since 2009. I travel the world to study, to master my craft, that whole putting in the 10,000 hours, and I have to take extreme care of myself for the energy and all of that, my travel, my business, and as my business gets bigger. So people overlook that, and it becomes a belief, and it's very outdated, because actually when they say, well, healers used to work for free, no, the community used to support the healers as a whole. They always got the first and the best. They brought their blessing bowls, the community filled them. Even when I was growing up, the Methodist ministers had their homes paid for, their cars, all their bills. But we have agreed now as the collective, we're no longer going to pay our healers. So now everybody's responsible themselves. But it comes up all the time still on social media, especially.
I love that you're blowing the whistle on this, because for me, the whole idea of not charging or not charging enough has to do with a couple other key ingredients. And I'll mention what they are and get your opinion of it. One is lack of self-worth. They don't feel deep down that they're actually worthy. And so it's a form of self-sabotage. They're saying, oh, don't pay me. Or they charge very little, just enough because they have to pay a bill. And so they're saying, well, I drove over here. I got to put gas in my car, or I drove an electric car and I got to go charge it up. So they need just enough money to squeak by, but largely because they don't feel they're deserving of more than that. So that's the first thing. The second one is, and this is the thing I see all the time, it's a belief that money's bad in some way, shape, or form. And of course, I've written books, you know this, so I won't spend time going into it, but it's the whole idea that money is the root of all evil, which it is not. And I've spent other shows and other books talking and blowing the whistle on that as a limiting thought based on a fragment of biblical literature. But those two things alone stop people from attracting money, achieving money, or asking for money. What is your take on those?
It is absolutely both of those I see. There's a whole thing about healers, like you said, charging nothing or very little. And I used to think it was humble and noble and sacrificing and all that. And then I had a moment where I had to realize it was me bumping up against my own stuff. Because if you don't charge, then it's easier if somebody's going to come back and say you weren't good. And people have a lot of persecution feelings, or am I good enough? And a lot of people who are empaths and very sensitive who have these gifts struggled and had challenges in their childhood that set a lot of these limiting beliefs. You don't have value. What you're interested in and what you can do is not valued in society. And I had to realize this is me playing out my stuff. I have this whole thing where I tell all the time, and people always ask for it. It's a blog. It's in my book. It's on YouTube. Don't make me talk about Mother Teresa, because people all the time will say, but Mother Teresa. And then I found out she was actually the CEO of $1 billion company.
That's right.
Traveled everywhere by private jet with an entourage, and then chose to go to the poorest of poor. But it's very different from what people believe.
I'm glad you said that, because I did my own research into her. And I often have pointed out when I get interviewed that Mother Teresa had no problem asking for money. She asked it for gigantic amounts of cash from very wealthy people. Now, one of the reasons that it was okay for her to do this, and this is what I want people to reflect on, and I want you to comment on, is that she had a sense of a mission. So at least, and obviously I never met her, but in her mind, she was thinking, well, this isn't really for me. This is for the people. So this gave her a mission, a cause that made it okay for her to allow that money in. But by extension, I'm inviting people that are watching, especially if they're a healer, and I want you to comment on this, Michelle, to consider that what you're doing is making a difference in people's lives. Isn't that a calling and a mission that is worth supporting in a much bigger way, which would mean in most cases charging more, asking for more, requesting more, so you can direct it where you're going to think it's to be the most positive? What's your take?
Yes, I agree. And one of the things I found out is this big impact I was called to make. No matter how much money I want, whether I want to live big or I want to live simple, you want to have choice in that. I soon realized I worked in nonprofit for a decade, and there's a lot of challenges there. And I finally realized I can start a for-profit business. There are plenty of people that want my help that can pay me, that I'll have money if I want to go give money wherever I want to give it. But a lot of healers, we struggle, and then we get a little bit, and then we have to stop doing our work while we pick ourselves up again. And we are not in a place to even take care of ourselves. So Mother Teresa had a mission and a purpose that was big enough. And so she went out and gathered that money. We can gather money in a for-profit, because I found the impact that I wanted to make. It cost a lot of money. I travel all over the world. and I reach people all over the world. It costs money to have the technology and the help and all of that. And there are a lot more vocal people in this world now speaking up about it, but it still polarizes a lot. And then the other piece you said about that old money is the root of all evil.
Mm-hmm.
I had to develop a whole new mindset around money and understand it to receive money and to feel my own value. And that was taken out of context, and it is not true. But the more I see the most with healers is money issues, and they come to the table, money and value issues. And yet we need more people like that with money and resources in their hands to impact the world.
I love what you're saying, and I totally agree with it. I think if you haven't already written this or started this should be your next book. It would be very controversial, and you could probably even come up with some sort of zinger of a hot button title, maybe even putting Mother Teresa's name in the title. But I will at least encourage you to tackle this issue of charging. And it could even be called Charge Ahead or Charge More or Why Charge? I don't know. But there's a freebie for today. Take it and run with it if it makes sense to you. As we're speaking about books, though, how did being an author change your life and your business?
So much. Part of that making an impact, because I was developing a body of work. I was that broke healer. And then I went over into the coaching world, which I didn't know was there. And I saw there are things in the coaching world they're doing that are working, and they're healing and transforming, but they're being able to support themselves, and they're making money and reaching hundreds. And I brought those coaching world strategies and concepts back to the healing world. And that is where my business came in. When I wrote that first book, it was easier to get booked in speaking gigs. I was on stages. I traveled to a lot of coaching events where I would sponsor and speak. And if I can get my book in somebody's hands, it'll either change their life with just that, or they'll seek me out later. And I just had a client a few years ago that had seen me speak 2 years before that and had my book and was ready to work with me. And that happens all the time. And then you have a body of work that you can develop programs and coaching and all of that from. But it doubled my income in less than a year. It got me on big stages, and it got me a presence and platform, because a book is a point of view. And when you're just selling healing and transformation, you're saying, do you want to buy coaching? Do you want to buy healing? Do you want to buy this or that? But a book becomes a point of view and a voice that brands you. And that's what it did for me.
I love it. As you know, I've often said that being an author is what got me where I am today, because being an author has given me credibility. It gave me authority. It gave me publicity. It gave me a product to sell. I was able to leverage it in a lot of different ways. In many ways, a business card or a book is like a glorified business card. There's more of you in it. And when somebody reads it, whether they bought it or I gave it to them, they now have a full body sense of who I am and what I stand for. And one of my early books was hypnotic writing, as you know. And because I had written hypnotic writing, when people were thinking, what kind of writer should I hire? Should I hire a copywriter that I found on Google, or back then it was in the Yellow Pages, or should I hire the guy that invented hypnotic writing and wrote the book on it? Well, hands down, they wanted the author. And that's what it's been throughout my career. I even ended up in the movie The Secret because I had written a book, The Attractor Factor, about the law of attraction. So, and I'm reiterating what you're saying because I want people to get it. I also want them to get the idea that it doesn't have to be a big deal. When you finally decided to write your book, and I know there were delays and stops and starts with the mindset, but when you said go, how long did it take you to write your book?
My first book, 90 days, and my second book, 8 weeks.
90 days.
After years of sitting on it.
Right. But that was because you got clear, to use our inside term, and you got your mindset around it, so that once you knew that, yeah, I can do this and I know how to do this and I'm just going to do this, the first one's done in 90 days. And did you work every day on writing it?
I set up a schedule and I looked, there are two ways you're writing. You're writing either where you like a real disciplined schedule, or where when you sit down, you're bursting and writing a lot. And so I had a combination, but I had to have discipline around it, which again is why I had book coaches and help, because that helped me get it done. But yes, they were both done, out on the market and then working for me. And I have to tell you, I learned from your books how to seed in my books also, where they bring me lots of clients. So a book is a business card. And I know from your story, one thing that touched me was you were inspired divinely to write that first book, and you didn't necessarily know what it would do for you, but you wrote it so then they could find you to be in the secret. So I know when I'm inspired, I create it, and then I let spirit connect the dots.
You used the phrase spirit quite a few times, and I want to make sure people understand what you're talking about. You and I are friends, and so I've known you for a while, so I know where you're at with it. How would you define that when you say spirit was directing you, or spirit informed you, or it was a gift from spirit? What's spirit?
I feel like there's a divine intelligence. I've used God for a lot of years growing up, and I went through seminary, and I'm a minister. In earlier days, I served in the church, but I really like spirit now to talk about it, because it's a divine intelligence source, or the creator of all that is. And every culture uses a different name, but it's the same thing. And so when I talk about spirit, it's that divine intelligence that is working on my behalf when I can connect with it and is guiding me. It's when you talk about Ho'oponopono, you're either data driven or you're getting inspired by divinity. So spirit is who is divinely inspiring me when I clear my data.
That's a mouthful right there. You said it very well, but you also brought up Ho'oponopono. Now, if people have been watching this show on a regular basis, it is a new show. There's 10 or 11 episodes so far. One of them a few weeks ago, I devoted to Ho'oponopono, largely because the man who taught it to me had just passed. Dr. E. Haleakula Hulen had passed away. And so I devoted an entire show to explaining what Ho'oponopono was. I had no guest. It was me talking to the viewer. But if people didn't see that episode, how would you describe Ho'oponopono? What is your elevator pitch for a Ho'oponopono definition?
It is a life-changing clearing process for me that works with the mindset. I've learned different clearing processes, but it starts as a healing prayer, and it works even if you don't know all the depth of it. But once you hear Dr. Hulin's story, and when I first heard it, I was a therapist, so I could really relate to what he was doing in the psychiatric hospital. And I worked in a psychiatric hospital. And beyond the 4 phrases, it actually becomes a philosophy of life and a way of living that then leads right into your zero limits and zero limits living. So it started with me, this is a clearing method, but then it became a way of living, because it makes me ask the question about every single thing. What in me needed this to show up, or this person to act like this, and then I can clear it at the source. And that has been so powerful that it becomes a whole way you live and a way of being.
I love your explanation. For the viewers, I would advise you to go back and watch the episode where I explain what Ho'oponopono is. The 4 phrases, because I can tell them to you very quickly, are, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And you're saying those inside yourself to your connection to spirit. And it's almost like making a phone call to spirit, and it's a kind of a prayer, kind of a petition. You're feeling something that's off in your world and you'd like to change it, but you're also taking full responsibility. In Ho'oponopono, you're not blaming anybody else, because in effect there isn't anybody else. They're illusions, they're projections. And so everything is inside of you, and you say, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, over and over again, to erase, as she used the word, data meaning beliefs, limitations, all the things that are keeping you from a zero limits living kind of a lifestyle. I've written 3 books on it. The very first one was Zero Limits. 10 years later, I wrote At Zero. And then the third one, which is dedicated to this woman here, Michelle, is The Fifth Phrase. She was at the advanced Ho'oponopono training we did a few years ago. I introduced the fifth phrase. The four phrases are the ones I just gave. And she walked up. I still remember the moment, Michelle. You walked up. I was still on stage. And you had said that the fifth phrase was so powerful, you almost didn't need the first four. And that's true. Now, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole and talk about the fifth phrase and all of that. I'm trying to elaborate on Ho'oponopono enough for you to use it, and also enough for you, Michelle, to tell us how it's affected you, because I know you've been doing this for years at this point. How has it redirected, transformed, eased, or in any other way helped your life?
I've used it so much in my life. What I realized was anytime I'm triggered, I'm not neutral about something. It's in me and it's just showing up outside of me. And I've learned to use Ho'oponopono, like you said, to clear that away so I can get divinely inspired again and act out of inspiration. And I have some great stories about in my business. One was I all of a sudden started having a bunch of clients getting weird with their money, payments not coming through, which I didn't usually have, or they started talking to me about they couldn't pay, all of that. So I said, wait, Ho'oponopono, what inside of me needs all these clients? Because anything more than three is a pattern. Why are they all showing up and they can't pay me and there's money issues? And I did Ho'oponopono. And this was the first time I grabbed a mala, because you do this too. I asked you, and I did Ho'oponopono all the way around the beads. And I did it for a few days and all of them cleared up to where the next month I had my biggest money month I'd ever had. And it was even, you can't make this stuff up, because they started clearing up because I cleared it in me to the when I thought this really got crazy. One client called and said, because of my own stuff with money right now, I know I'm paying you through December, but I want to go ahead and pay you in full. So big chunks of money, and all at the end of it, none of my clients owed me money. And I still use that. In fact, the other day I had a triggering around somebody in my business, and I did Ho'oponopono. I was ranting and raving to my colleague, and then I pulled her picture up on my screen and I did Ho'oponopono, and it cleared. She wanted a resolution. The email came in from her while I was doing the Ho'oponopono.
I'm hoping all the viewers
powerful.
Oh, yes, I got it. I'm feeling it. And I want all the viewers to really feel it. First of all, I want to make sure we're all on the same page. A mala is a string of beads. In some cultures, like in the Catholic Church, they have a rosary. And so it's a string of beads. This is a string of beads from India. I don't know if people can see it. These are rudraksha seeds. It's just one form of a mala. There's many kinds of forms. I have another. This was given to me almost 20 years ago. It's all rubies. And what she's referring to is it's a meditation device. Usually a mala has 108 beads on them. And as you touch each bead, you would say one of the phrases, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. You can do it another way and just say all four phrases per bead and then go all the way around. But it's a focusing tool, a meditation tool, contemplation tool. It's another way to hold your presence and your intention as you say the four phrases. The other thing that you said, Michelle, I want to make sure I heard you right. You said if something happens 3 times, that is a trigger, or is that worth clearing? Did I hear you right, or did you say it different?
That's a pattern. It's something I'm aware of, and I also teach it that anytime something is showing up in your life 3 times, it's a pattern. So by the time the third client in business, you and I have been in business a long time, people don't pay you, or credit cards get shut down, or any of that. But when 3 people in 1 week had money stuff with me, then I know it's a pattern and I need to start looking at it. So anytime 3 times something shows up from different people or places, I start doing Ho'oponopono.
It's so beautiful. Can you give me an example outside of money? Just because I want people that are watching to be able to relate to it, whether it's a relationship, you gave us a relationship one, a family relationship, health oriented, with pets, anything else come to mind as an example of using Ho'oponopono to make a difference?
It's with everything. For instance, I always think we're all these multifaceted diamonds and we have all these faces. And when we come together and engage energetically, we light up both where we're alike in good ways and where we trigger and play out each other's stuff. So I've been married 30 years now, and there are times we play out each other's mother and father stuff, family stuff. So when I see those patterns come up, what I ask is, what in me is needing my husband to play this out with me right now, because I know him to be all these different things. And this worked for me. There was a pattern that would not go away. And I did the Ho'oponopono, and then I was kind of new to it. And I cleared it, and it never came back. And it had been showing up for 10 years. But I finally said, instead of saying, you're bad, you're wrong, you better fix this, if I could only change you, I didn't even have to know where it came from. It ended up going back to my mother and family stuff. And so, see, he was just playing it out because I needed to clear it. And it went away with Ho'oponopono.
I love it. What a great story, because I've often been asked, what about if you're in a relationship and the other person doesn't believe like you, or the other person is triggering you? And what you're demonstrating is in Ho'oponopono, it's all an inside job. It doesn't matter what you are giving as a story on the outside. What matters is what you are feeling on the inside and what you do about it. And Ho'oponopono was one way to handle it. Now, I want to make sure. Go ahead.
I was just going to let you know that's a great point, because I never went and told him or my mother, okay, I did this Ho'oponopono, and both of them, it cleared, and they were different and I was different. And I never told them I did it.
And that is a great thing to remind people, is because this is working on another level. And in fact, in the original story that's in the first book, Zero Limits, Dr. Hulen worked at a mental hospital for the criminally insane. And he did not tell the patients what he was doing. But as he looked at the patient's records and he was feeling, who knows, rage, embarrassment, grief, confusion, whatever he was feeling that was triggered by the records, he worked on inside himself with Ho'oponopono. As he moved in a direction of serenity, a direction of peace, a direction of clarity inside, removing the data, the beliefs, the limitations, the perceptions, the judgments, this is where the magic happens. The inmates start to get better. And this is what you're demonstrating, is that you have an inner relationship problem, but when you work on it on the inside of you and you've changed you, that's the magic. They respond to it. They don't even know what happened.
Right.
Nobody said anything to them.
The clients didn't know I was working on it either. And then they start contacting me to resolve it.
This is so fantastic. Now, I want to make sure in the limited time we have that I pull as much from you to help all of our viewers here. So we've been inviting them to be thinking about how they can turn their passion, their hobby, the thing maybe they've been taking for granted and maybe they've never even thought of before, and turning it into a type of a business. And we use the example of reviewing movies. And yeah, that can be turned into a business to get your head around the idea that, oh, instead of giving it away, maybe I can start packaging this in some way and charging for it. What other tips do you have on creating a personality branded business? Because that's what I've more or less have done. That's what you've more or less have done. And I think that's the direction we are getting people to think about.
Yes, very much. Because when I started out, like I said, local healing center, I had tools and processes. You learn modalities, and too many people then are trying to sell the tool when people are buying access to you and your energy and your body of knowledge and work. When I learned to brand myself, for instance, people try to come up with clever names. What do I name my business? When you need to brand yourself, when I changed to Michelle Barr, public figure, my business again doubled in less than a year. You have built Joe Vitale, and then you have made albums, music, books, TV shows, speaking, all under that umbrella. You could do just about anything now, and it would fit under that umbrella because it's part of your personality. And you've shared, I love to play the guitar, and then you've monetized it. In the same way, I learned under the umbrella of Michelle Barr, everything that's related to my life, I can now share with a community I've built, take them on my journey and monetize it, so that now I only do things that I love in my life, but also to make money and as my business. And you become fully integrated. We know a lot about your life and you share all of it. Like, even I always kept hearing you were going to get that dog, and now your dog is a part of your brand.
Right.
And you share all of it because it's all part of it and it all makes sense. And that's building a personality brand. I wish I would have done it sooner. An authentic voice, then all you need is to build a community around you that resonates with everything you're about. And then you share your journey and you live your life and you share that. And then you're this spiritual teacher teaching what you've learned. That's what you did in The Secret and then in all of your books.
And when you say share it, are you referring to social media? Are you encouraging people to be on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and whatever the Facebook and the other ones?
You and I both started our business before Facebook. It was
right.
Still a thing for college kids when I started. So we had other ways we did it. But yes, now building your online presence and platform, you talk about somebody reviewing movies. There are YouTubers reviewing toys, making millions, children. And so getting on and creating that presence and platform. I'm on Facebook all the time. I get most of my clients through Facebook, but there's YouTube, TikTok. A lot of my clients love TikTok right now, Instagram. It's getting your message out there. I traveled before COVID like you did and spoke on live stages, and I still love doing that, but it's also the virtual stage. It's anywhere. I started speaking at meetups and Rotary mornings and luncheons and dinners, networking, and then went from there. It's getting out there and having a message and sharing it. And then you write your books and get it out there. So yes, social media has made it where everybody could get online and they could create something easily. And it's much more affordable and it can happen more quickly now.
So much I can comment on. First of all, I wanted to point out that when I started as a speaker, first of all, I was a reluctant speaker because I was an introvert. I was shy. I was insecure, immature, did not want to be in front of anybody, let alone a crowd. My first crowd had 6 people in it, and I almost passed out. But as I kept doing it over time, I got better. And then the largest crowd I've ever been in front of was 20,000 people, and I was in Peru. So as you keep doing whatever it is that you're nervous about now, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the viewers, you get better at it. And also, when I lived in Houston and I had been in poverty in Houston, as I slowly came out of it and I had my first book, I had heard that you can sell your book in the back of the room to a crowd of people if they liked you, because they'll want to take part of you home. So if you've educated them, you've inspired them, you've entertained them, they may want to buy the book. And so I started doing that, as she had mentioned, for the Rotary clubs, for the Chamber of Commerce groups. And here's what I learned. There's always somebody in that group that's a member of another group. And if they liked you at all, they would come up and say, I really liked your presentation. I have a business breakfast group I'm in. Would you come and speak to us? And I would say, yes. If nothing else, I got free breakfast. When I was there, there would be somebody else who would walk up and say, I'm in a group. Would you come and speak? Now, obviously, that was before the pandemic, but I'm pointing out this is how you seize opportunities. You say yes, and you develop the muscle of your ability to do these things over time. Now, I do social media too, and I'm Dr. Joe Vitale on Instagram and Facebook, Dr. Joe Vitale. Michelle, what have you learned that works on the social media, because I see you all over Instagram and Facebook. Are there a couple takeaways, tips, things that are tried and true in your experience that seem to work?
Yes. And what you just said about speaking gigs in person, it happens virtually too. I speak on a telesummit. Somebody else asks me to be on theirs, their radio show, their podcast. And it's that opportunities and following the breadcrumbs and saying yes, like you and I did, even when we didn't feel ready. If an opportunity shows up, I know now it's universal law that I am a match to it, even if it's going to stretch and grow me. I would say you show up as who you are. The biggest thing my clients, when they come to me, but then I'll have to get visible and I've been hidden. And what if people judge me and I don't want to? You have to work through all those mindset pieces about who's going to see you on social media. I've just shown up all these years, shared my life like you do, as well as my business, and you're both giving value. I've learned the formula that really works of you're giving 90% value and then 10% you're making offers and selling. And because you've given that value, people want more and they want to take that away. But you have to learn to sell, because what I first did was I built a non-buying audience of raving fans and followers that did nothing for me. And then I had to learn you've got to be always serving and learning how to sell at the same time and getting visible, no matter who's watching.
This is beautiful. I love what you're saying here. You had mentioned about people's reservations, and I'm wondering, how would you answer somebody who said, I'm really introverted. I don't really want to be on a stage, virtually or not. I want to be behind the camera, not in front of the camera. And yet this person wants to be in business. They want to come out with whatever their product or service is. What do you think you would say to this make-believe person who's an introvert?
One thing I've done with some of them, because I've had them training to be spiritual coaches with me, and it's like, now it's time for you to launch in the world. What I've done is I've interviewed them first, because they're afraid of the technology, but they're also afraid of what will they say and will they know what to say. And that works really well to first have me interviewing them and pulling it out of them. Then they see people liked me and it worked. And so you have to set up what works for you. For instance, if you're very visual, but you don't want to be speaking a lot, there are other platforms where you can do little short things, or where you're more visuals. I mean, I have lots of quotes with images, and also I'm a writer. And when people ask me what gets more for you, Facebook Lives or written posts, for me, it's written posts, because I am a writer and I love writing. And people don't want to go read blog articles on on websites as much anymore. They want to read them right on Facebook if they're on Facebook. And I write posts and I get a lot of engagement, and then I have visuals, and then I do go live. And then some of it is strengthening that muscle and getting comfortable. But there are ways to get that out there without being in the spotlight on center stage when you're not ready for that.
I love all of these tips. I think I would give one tip that you probably already do, and that's the idea that people want authenticity. Instead of trying to pretend to be something you're not, own what you are. I think it is very powerful that if somebody is going into business, they found that they're going to review movies and they want to make a YouTube video, and you're nervous about it, say you're nervous about it. Own it. Don't try to hide it. I think it's sincerity and authenticity that they seem to be craving it. Maybe all the time, but it seems at this point in time. What do you think? Do you agree, or you found something different?
They do. It's that authenticity. And back before Facebook Live, for instance, we used to go in studios and shoot professional videos.
Right.
And now with Facebook Live, people want it to be like, oh, I'm just working in my office. Come on in for a minute. Or I'm jogging and I thought of you. And they're sweating and they stop and talk to you. And so you don't need to be perfect. And I've said, when I'm doing one and my dog barks or the doorbell rings or something goes weird with technology, I just call it out if I do something like that. And so it's about that authenticity. What I found is people love reality TV for those reasons, but there are people in yours and my world that they want something better than what they get from reality TV. And we're that version of inspiring, motivating, high vibration, but they want to know about our lives. The people who have become my friends on my Facebook personal page, they become my high paying and long-term clients because there's a different psychology in like my stuff or be my friend, and they want a seat into my life as well. But when you're sharing your personal life, it still has to be all about them. If you're sharing what you're eating or what you're doing, you have to learn that art of it's still all about them.
That is $1 million point, because throughout my career, what I've tried to do was share my life and what I was going through, but in a way that benefits the person that was reading or watching or listening. And I have done that when I was writing all these blog posts, which I started in 2004 or something like that. I kept telling myself that the other blog posts I was seeing were boring me. They were telling me what they did for lunch. And I thought, I don't care what you did for lunch. Unless there was a breakthrough, there was an insight, there was another person that was fascinating, there was some story there. And I would apply that to me. So if I did tell a story about having lunch, boy, there better be a lesson, there better be an insight, there better be a surprise there, or I wasn't posting it. So I love that little insight and reminder that it's about you, but don't forget it's still about them.
That's exactly it. Whenever I post something that's personal, it still has to be tied to them or I'm not posting it.
Right. Right. So tell me about the spiritual coaching, why you founded it and created the Spiritual Coach School. It sounds fascinating.
What I found over time is, as I've been working with clients now for over a decade as a business coach, people come with various gifts and bodies of work, and they're already doing these things, but they're doing them mostly as practitioners, selling their minutes for dollars. And so it's come have an hour session, get on my table, or come in my office, and now even online. And what I found was the biggest gap. First of all, people wanted more from them than just coming for a session. And I realized in my own life, because I went over to the coaching world and brought back, I found that that model works where people come into a container where you hold them and mentor and coach them for a period of time. So spiritual coaching is my version of all the people in my world already have healing and transformational gifts, and they don't understand somebody would like to work with them for 90 days, 6 months, a year, where they have access to all of it instead of, do you want to buy this or this or this, 30 minutes or an hour? And I started working with that principle. It's what doubled my business in less than a year and took me to a full-time, profitable, sustainable business. And now I'm so passionate about what spiritual coaches can do that I'm training and certifying spiritual coaches to go out in the world and do their work to move from that struggling. Practitioners stay struggling and broke and they get defeated. And I'm able to help them move to being profitable, sustainable business as a coach and do all the things they're already doing. And then from there, they want to write a book, they want to speak on stage, they want to podcast and all of those things.
This is so amazing. We're running out of time. Where can people find more about you or the Spiritual Coaching School, Spiritual Coach School, or wherever you want to send them?
Yes, go to bethecontribution.com and you'll find everything about spiritual coaching and Spiritual Coach School. You also will see a button that you can hit there if you want to talk with me by phone, email, or messenger. And then find me on Facebook, Michelle Barr. I'm there every day giving a lot of free training and free information for you.
You are amazing. Let me ask you an off-the-wall question here. What is a question you wish I or someone would ask you?
Oh, my goodness. I think if you understand what's coming to me is if you understand the trajectory, because people also feel like, what do I have to offer? What do I have to bring to the table? I found my way. I always knew I was a healer and a helper. but I had to find my way from what I was doing in other jobs, then a therapist, then I went to seminary, I became a hospital chaplain, then a healer, then coaching. Every single thing you've ever done, you will bring to the table when you build your personality brand and do your work. And now it all makes sense. But others would have looked at me and said, her resume looks ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. She obviously is not a good candidate. I'm unemployable at this point, but they thought my life and my work didn't make sense. And now I built this empire and it makes perfect sense.
You are amazing. You are so inspiring. Thank you for agreeing to be here. Thanks for being here. Thank you for so open-heartedly sharing everything. Your generosity is off the charts. I'm very grateful, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have had a great time talking with you.
Everybody, I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. This is Zero Limits Living. Every Friday, I bring you inspiration and information to help you live an awakened life, a life that makes you free, a life where you can follow your dreams and profit from them, and you can be healthy and happy and wise all at once. You can watch the show on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, YouTube. Download the Lux TV app. I'm grateful to Lux Studios, Candace Barr, Nick, who's doing the engineering today. I have a website up. You can go to ZeroLimitsLivingTV.com and watch all the episodes. And as I like to say, expect miracles.
Glutathione is a big word. It's the body's own master antioxidant. It's a scavenger for free radical, bacteria, and viruses. There are no products in the market with the ingredient NASET. NASET increases the production of glutathione that's in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system, elevate sense of well-being, support muscle strength and endurance, cognitive function, and liver support. It helps with increased energy and blood sugar regulation. Get your bottle of GSH Plus from www.salvationnutra.com.